Hi class, this is William Anderson, and I'm making this short video about a learning technique called modeling. Now, this is a technique that you've actually been using since the time you were a young child. The best way to explain this is to actually kind of do a modeling activity. So what I'd like you to do is go ahead and pause the video and get yourself a piece of scratch paper. Okay. Now, hopefully you've got your piece of scratch paper now, and I want you to think about somebody that you really have a lot of respect or admiration for. It could be somebody you know or somebody you don't. It could be a celebrity, an individual from history. It could even be somebody from fiction. But think about what is it about this person that causes you to have so much respect or admiration for them. Now in a moment, I'm going to ask that you pause the video, and I want you to write down a list of things on your piece of scratch paper that cause you to respect this person, just a list of things about them. Now, if you can't think of 5 to 10 things about this person that cause you to respect them, go ahead and think of 2 models instead. Sometimes people ask, is it okay if I don't really have a particular person in mind? Yes, the point here is you're effectively developing a model, a list of characteristics that cause you to respect and admire somebody. So go ahead and pause the video. Take as much time as you need to come up with 5 to 10 things that cause you to respect or admire someone. Okay, now that you've got that, I want you to think about how much each of these elements relates to you. Are they descriptive of you? And I'm going to ask that you, in a moment, you're going to grade yourself in each of the elements on a scale of 1 to 10. Now, before you get started, 5 is average. So if one of the things you put that cause you to respect somebody is that they're honest, a 5 would be very rarely lies, because the average person actually is really quite honest. A 6 would mean this person also, or that you also don't even tell lies of convenience. So if your friend calls and says, hey, you want to hang out today, and you just don't feel like it, you wouldn't say, oh, I'm sorry, I'm busy. You would actually tell them the truth. I just don't feel like it. Getting up into the 8s, an 8 would be, in addition to not telling lies or lies of convenience, you also don't tell lies of omission. Lies of omission sometimes occur when we leave out a detail to make us look better than we would otherwise look. We give people a false impression. A 9 or a 10, this would be somebody who, if somebody around them tells a lie, they would correct it. Or if, based upon what you said, somebody got a false impression, you would go out of your way to correct it. It's a defining characteristic for you. Now, on the flip side, if everything you say is a lie, that's probably not a 1. That's probably around a 3, or maybe a 2. Getting down into that 1 or maybe 2, all of a sudden now you're intentionally spreading lies. So dishonesty is a defining characteristic of who you are. Most of us, for most characteristics, will find ourselves between 4 and 6, with an occasional 3 or 7 or 2 or 8. And then a rare 1 or a 10. So what I want you to do is you're going to pause the video, take a little bit to grade yourself on a scale of 1 to 10 for each of these elements. Again, you're not grading the person that you described, you're grading yourself. Okay, hopefully you got that done. Now the next part of the modeling activity is for each of these elements, you're going to identify a specific behavioral change that you can make to improve by 1. So for example, if you put that you respect somebody because they're generous, and you think that you're above average and generous, so you gave yourself a 6, what is a behavior change that you could make that would bring that 6 to a 7? In what way could you make a new habit that can improve this? Well, in generosity, perhaps if you have a friend that struggles in math and you're good at math, maybe taking time and volunteering to help teach them factoring or some other aspect of math. Or if you're really good working on cars, You know that a tune-up nowadays is basically changing spark plugs, a relatively easy task if you know a lot about cars. So if you have a friend or a neighbor that's going to be going to a mechanic shop and paying a significant amount of money to get their spark plugs changed, maybe say, listen, let's go over to the auto parts store. I'll show you what you need to buy, and I'll teach you how to change your spark plugs. Okay, so finding those little habits that you can change. All too often people think, well, I'm just being who I am. This is just me. But actually, what we are doing are habits that we have developed through choices that we've made. Now, in this modeling activity that we're doing it for respect and admiration. But really, this same technique can be used to improve any aspect of our life. If you want to become a better student, you don't need to buy one of those books that say how to get straight A's in school. Instead, look around you. There are people around you that are already very good students. So what do they do? What are some of the habits that they have that enable them to be good students? Do they study more? Many of them probably get good night's sleep because rest is so critical to our cognitive functioning and our ability to retain information. Or if you play in athletics and you play a particular sport, you know that watching other people that are really good at that sport, you can say, what are they doing that make them so good at it? This learning technique actually dates back to our infancy. When we were babies, we had our parents and older siblings and the people around us as models, and we were constantly trying to learn, what do they do? And then mimicking that. So, you have this slide here I just noticed says it's an extra credit opportunity. That is old information. It is not extra credit. It is actually a required assignment in the course. You're going to actually do a modeling exercise. And there are two speeches. You are to select only one of them. Either Ronald Reagan's 1988 GOP convention speech or Bill Clinton's 2000 Democratic Convention speech. There will be links to both of these speeches on the Moodle page. Again, you only select one. There are a couple of reasons why these two individuals were selected. For one thing, they're old. The reason that's a good idea, sometimes people have said, can I use Barack Obama? He was a good speaker too. Yes, he is an excellent speaker, but the thing about Ronald Reagan and Bill Clinton is that because they're from an earlier era, the policies they talk about probably aren't going to get your blood to boil. Your focus here is to evaluate them as speakers, not their policies. Ronald Reagan, he was very big on fighting communism. Now, you may like communism or dislike communism, but you're probably not going to get really upset about what he says. Bill Clinton talked about a change in how government works, that government would serve the people rather than some of the interests that it had, and could be used as an effective way to solve some of our social problems. Now, some of you might agree or disagree with some of the policy ideas that he had, but it's probably not going to get your blood to boil. Because both of these presidents talked about doing things that are a little bit more integrated now, or have been completely rejected. Barack Obama is going to talk about things like the Affordable Care Act, or commonly referred to as Obamacare. Whether you like Obamacare or dislike Obamacare, you probably have a strong opinion about it. And that's going to make it more difficult to evaluate him as a speaker. Others have asked, can we do Martin Luther King? As I mentioned earlier in the term, Martin Luther King is a personal hero of mine, and ordinarily I would say absolutely, he was such a great speaker. However, we are actually going to be using Martin Luther King's I Have a Dream speech for an activity later in the term. And as a result of that, I want to avoid having you do that one because we may take a lot of your material. And so please go ahead and just use one of these two speeches. Again, either Ronald Reagan's 1988 GOP convention speech or Bill Clinton's 2000 Democratic convention speech. Now, each of these two gentlemen spoke to their party conventions at a number of years. Please use these specific ones. In 1988, Ronald Reagan was leaving office. He was never going to run for office again. In 2000, Bill Clinton was leaving office. He was never going to run for office again. As a result of this, I think you're really getting a sense of their oratory, a sense of how good of a speaker they were. Speaking of which, another reason for these two is that they were sensational public speakers. Regardless of what you think of them as a president or their policies, they were very effective at communicating their message to the people. When Ronald Reagan left office after 2 terms, his approval rating was 63%. 63% is astonishing. To put that into perspective, Barack Obama eventually reached like 51%. Donald Trump, Donald Trump, his approval rating currently, as this video is being made, his approval rating is in the 30s. And Barack Obama spent a lot of time there. George W. Bush spent a lot of time in the 30s or 40s. Bill Clinton, when he left office, despite a $40 million effort by the opposing party, the Republican Party, to embarrass him, humiliate him, ruin his reputation, when he left office, his approval rating was 68%. 68%. That's one of the highest approval ratings of a 2-term president that we've had since we've kept track. So these two are sensational communicators. So please select one of those two. Now, I know that some of you might have an emotional reaction to Bill Clinton right now because of Hillary. Bill Clinton and Hillary are two very different candidates, two very different speakers. And so please keep that in mind. Another reason for choosing these two is Ronald Reagan is a conservative Republican, Bill Clinton is a liberal Democrat. And as a result of that, if you have a strong political view, either of the political right or the political left, you can choose one of the presidents that you can at least tolerate what he has to say. So in this modeling exercise, which elements you choose are entirely your opinion. So I don't want you to think, well, they talk about eye contact being important, so I'll select that as one of the elements. Select eye contact if you believe that that's one of the reasons that makes them such a good speaker. So in the activity we did during this video, we focused on respect or admiration. In this, focus on what makes these two such good speakers. What makes somebody such a great public speaker? There is an example modeling exercise on the Moodle page. So if you would like to see how these are formatted, go ahead and go to the Moodle page, click on the model example link, and the example uses President Obama as the model. Another reason why it's best not to use him for this exercise. So go ahead and look at it. I think it's relatively simple. Most of these modeling assignments are about a page long. So that concludes this video. Thank you very much for listening.